Absolute Wonder Woman has been turning some heads. And one of the fun things it, and the rest of the Absolute Universe really, but today we're focusing our eyes here, has been doing is how it plays with introducing familiar characters from the main line. Wonder Woman is in an interesting position regarding this, particularly when it comes to her villains, because some of them just in general are less well known to the mainstream. The second long arc of the first year of Absolute Wonder Woman started in issue 8 in 2025, an issue written by Kelly Thompson with art by Hayden Sherman, colors by Jordi Belair, and issue 9 introduced Queen Clea as the Queen of the Maze. The Maze is a shady kind of version of the Labyrinth, even though in this universe it's part of Area 41, that being the labyrinth of Greek and also Roman mythology. This series blends things from them sometimes they'll lean more into one than the other. Wonder Woman enters it in search of another Amazon. However, what she finds first is not that. She finds many things down there. Now, Clea has positioned herself as a cruel ruler inside the maze, and her presence itself is actually a bit of a neat callback. For Queen Clea is from the golden age of Wonder Woman, back in the 1940s. She is one of Wonder Woman's original villains, who like many was cast aside when the book was taken over by Robert Kanigher. Golden and Silver Age Wonder Woman at times feel almost like entirely different creatures. But Queen Clea in general is an interesting character who pops up here and there, and you know I love characters like that, so let's take a look at Queen Clea. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and yes, I saw Absolute Queen Clea's shoes. Now, Queen Clea debuted in Wonder Woman number 8 in 1944, and she was created by William Moulton Marston and Harry G. Peter. Her first story appearance is Queen Clea's Tournament of Death, but she appears in all of the stories in that issue. It was not uncommon in that era for all the stories to be connected together. So basically we had a whole Queen Clea arc in that issue. So she comes across feeling very fully formed. You get a really good sense of her because you get to see her in so many different stories. Now the cover of this issue has the tagline Wonder Woman and the Adventures of the Undersea Amazons, which already ties in a bit to our Absolute Universe thing where she goes under looking for Amazons, even though she doesn't go under the sea. But she doesn't here in this story either, you'll see. You've seen Wonder Woman in many perilous places, using her amazing strength daringly to help America, but never have you seen the beautiful Amazon princess in such an astounding predicament as she encounters in the lost land of Atlantis, the sunken continent ruled by arrogant and ruthless women, bigger than Amazons. Never before have you seen Steve Trevor so brave, so handsome, and so powerful as in this saga of Queen Clea's Tournament of Death. Yeah, they're really gonna hype up how hot everybody is in this. There are always layers of kink when you're dealing with Golden Age Wonder Woman, and we will address them as they come up, but you're already starting to see it with the big woman. They can step on you. The shades of kink are very much baked into Golden Age Wonder Woman alongside some of the other themes. Now the story itself opens with Diana working in Army intelligence. She's taken down a coded message from Steve. Let's see, Steve's radio message. Oh, it's in code. You'll have to get it decoded. I can read any code as easily as English. Here, I'll translate it for you. Steve was on the hunt for a formula that had been divided into 3 sections. So you get to see him get each piece. And it is fairly interesting. The Wonder Woman stories of this era do take the time to really paint a full picture of what's going on. But for our purposes, we need the third person he meets, who already is not who he was expecting. I began to investigate without success when one night a girl came to my quarters. I greet thee, manling, in the name of mighty Madra. I never met Madra, but it's nice to see you. What can I do for you? With a sudden gesture, the girl threw off her burnous. Do not blaspheme, manling. I'm Queen Eros. Thou mayest kneel and kiss my hand. What kind of airs is this gal putting on? She's probably an escaped maniac, but I'd better humor her. Greetings, oh gorgeous one. That is better. I bring thee the missing paper thou seekest. Steve is also just used to a random giant woman appearing and ordering him around. Now, she murdered the Frenchman who had the formula piece before her, but she says he was going to sell it to the Nazis anyway. Also, because she has this piece for Steve, can she get a ride to where she's going? He does owe her. Also, I hope you like the word manling, because the Atlanteans are going to be throwing it around, because that's for their class of slave men that they have under there. So you're going to be hearing it a lot. Now, Diana thinks all of this sounds highly suspect, and she's going to be proven right when she gets a message from Steve later on the mental radio. Calling Wonder Woman. Plane over uncharted island at equator 23 degrees west longitude, being sucked into crater of extinct volcano by terrific downdraft. Can't pull out. Farewell, beautiful. Now, Queen Eris brought Steve down to Atlantis. That's why he's getting sucked down the volcano. And here we get to hear it described. And we need that because the action is going to take place primarily inside Atlantis. We are under the Atlantic Ocean, flying above the sunken continent of Atlantis. But Atlantis was lost 1,000,000 years ago. To us Atlanteans, it is the upper world that was lost. Our civilization is far beyond thine. Until now, we have never desired to find again the world of manlings. When Atlantis sank beneath the sea, the earth folded over it, sealing it in a vast air pocket under the ocean floor. 2 tunnels to the upper air remain, though. I will draw a picture. This is the air inlet through which we descended. The other crater on another island is our air outlet. Through it, our spent and heated air rushes upward. Now, Queen Eris didn't tell Steve anything because she doesn't respect manlings, and so because of that, he's out of fuel and can't land where she needs him to. So they land inside of enemy territory. And he and Queen Eris are captured by Venturians, who they also make a big deal about the fact that Steve is bigger than they're expecting. The men down there are small. They are physically smaller than the Atlantean woman. It's also so that 5 of them can pile on top of Steve. Steve goes down under an avalanche of Atlantean girls. Hold him fast, sisters. This manling is strong as a woman. Thou wilt die in the arena, manling, to amuse Queen Clea. I too shall laugh at the stupid male who dared strike a mistress superior. What sweet, gentle creatures you Atlantean girls are. Steve has sass this issue. Look at Steve, almost having a personality. The meme online, and has been going on for quite a long time, decades, is that Steve does not have much of a personality. Now, some may argue it. Feel free to down below. Wonder Woman does not crash her plane descending to Atlantis, but instead parks it and climbs down. But she does run into the Venturian Atlanteans, who make fun of her for being as small as a manling. She allows herself to be captured when she learns that they have Steve. She figures that she'll be placed somewhere near him and can then rescue him. She ends up being placed in a cell with Queen Eris, and so she gets to learn the history of everything. It was very convenient cell placement. The 2 leading nations of Atlantis are Venturia and Orania. Ours is a rich country with many manlings. Clea, Queen of Venturia, invaded Orania without warning, seeking gold and slaves. Clea caught us unprepared. I and my woman officers fought fiercely, but were captured. Orania was conquered. Seeking some means to free my country, I escaped prison and climbed desperately to the lost world above. So Queen Eris was actually seeking the same formula that Steve was, which is going to turn out is a devitamizer. She's going to turn it on Queen Clea and her army. Also, she calls Steve handsome, which is uncomfortable because we've established that all the men here are a slave class. Don't keep Steve for breeding, please. Steve is already about to be sent to die in the arena gladiatorial style. But as for Clea, this is how she enters the story. She's already triumphant, so there's already this big image of her as a kind of conqueror and tyrant. Steve, meanwhile, dressed in the regulation uniform, it's a loincloth, of an Atlantean male, is brought before Queen Clea. They're slave-laying him before slave Leia. So this is our manling from the Lost World. Sacred serpents. He's as big as a woman. Clea is cruel and revels in her position. You can see in how callously she decides Steve's fate. But thou art too strong. We should have to devise special fetters to hold thee at work. It'd be more amusing to see thee die. You also see it in how she treats Wonder Woman, who she chooses to be her slave because she's petite and pretty. She'll keep her at her feet. Now, ultimately, Wonder Woman does save Steve, who has a very good fight with some boars in this issue. And the Venturians are devitamized by Queen Eris, who also escaped and went and got all the things she needed for the formula. But Steve says this can't last, and he's right. The next story is The Girl in the Iron Mask, and it features Diana trying to help a little girl find her father and his lost shipmates. When the girl comes and tells her the story about how the ship was captured by these giant pirate women, and nobody believes, but Wonder Woman believes, so does Steve, because he knows exactly who that is. Now, the ship that was captured also had some German prisoners, and they're also taken down to Atlantis. So Diana rushes to Atlantis to ask about all this. But apparently you don't watch your outlet tunnel. Atlantean girls invade our upper world and kidnapped a ship full of men. I suspect Clea led the raid. Clea? Impossible. She's my prisoner. The queen entertains her guests at the palace. If Clea's prisoner, who rules Venturia? Clea's daughter, Petra. She wouldn't dare attack while I hold Clea captive. Maybe she escaped and you don't know it. Now, Petra was also featured in the Absolute story, so put a pin in that, because we're going to see her a few times in these Golden Age stories. So she's also part of the remix we'll discuss. Now, Clea is kept in an iron mask, but when Wonder Woman goes to look at her, she notices something. This girl's not a natural blonde. Her roots are growing out. Clea is a natural blonde. She noticed when she was at her feet. So no, this is not Clea, but her daughter, Petra, who Clea has forced to trade places with her. So it's Clea who's been ruling the Venturians all this time, not Petra, and so she did lead the raid. She wants revenge. Confess and tell me the truth. This strange robe of gold compels me to speak. By hypnotizing the guards into putting the mask on me instead, she escaped. With my hair dyed and wearing the iron mask, we look alike. Queen Eris, thinking mother a prisoner, kept no watch. Clea raided the upper world to capture strong manlings for soldiers. Soon she will invade Orania with an invincible army. You see, continuity, because she saw how strong Steve was. And by invincible army, she's gonna use the Nazi prisoners to do this. She's gonna bribe them with gold. The American ones aren't gonna go for it. Because remember, this is still a wartime era comic. But yes, she has an army of upper level slave men now to go against the Atlantean slave men, because that's who the vast majority of Queen Eris's army is made up of. And they run away and the narration box makes fun of them for it. This issue we learn something else about Clea, however, and that's that she's vengeful and that she's willing to step on people close to her to get it done, even sacrifice her own daughter. She also wants very specific revenge because she turns the devitamizer back on the queen and her female honor guard. The Iranian leaders collapse under a heavy barrage of the powerful drug. My stupid strong arms, now you shall know the vengeance of Queen Clea. The fact that she's self-centered is reinforced when we see that she didn't even really remember that her daughter was there, and it wasn't top of her priority to go get her. With Orania completely conquered, Clea remembers her daughter. Oh mother, I knew that would free me. I almost forgot thee, Petra, but thou hast served a useful purpose. For my reward, I ask vengeance on Eris and that devil woman who discovered my disguise. I grant thy request. Take the prisoners and do with them as thou wilt. See, Petra was willing to do this for her mother. There's an interesting dynamic there. They don't ever fully play with it. And it would be a great parallel at some point for Diana and Hippolyta, but it does not come to fruition. But think about it. In a fanfic someday, or maybe years later down the line in a story. For we see here that Petra has very much been shaped by her mother, and she's very similar. She also is cold, cruel, and desiring of vengeance. She has the Queen and Wonder Woman fully encased in iron because of the iron mask she was forced to wear. Now, of course, Wonder Woman escapes, but this time Queen Eris decides that Queen Clea is too dangerous to live. Atlantis isn't safe with those two women alive. I hate to execute prisoners, but don't kill them. I'll take them back with me and see if Mala and her Amazons can make them into good citizens. Aren't you taking a chance, beautiful? Bringing back those two Atlantean Hitlers? Probably. But while there's life, there's good in anybody. Okay, so she's gonna take them to Transformation Island. The prisoners there must wear these Venus girdles of submission that make them enjoy the feeling of submitting and the good deeds they do. But they can also acknowledge that that's not how they really feel. They can feel the girdle forcing them to feel that. It's a whole thing. We did a whole video on the Venus girdle of submission. I'll link it. The girdle also forces them to obey the commands of their jailers. This is where Clea and Petra are headed. It's where we'll see them next in the last story of this issue, the Captive Queen. In this one, Eris's daughter Octavia comes to man's world to learn from Wonder Woman, but she's also got a bit of an attitude problem. She's arrogant. She can't fully control her rage. And so Wonder Woman decides to take her to get some Amazonian training. I'll leave this girl with you. She's strong, but can't control her impulses. She needs training. We'll control them for her, with chains if necessary. I'll wear them willingly. Golden Age Wonder Woman is very unique in how it approaches the concept of submission. The idea of this strength in self-control and power in willingly submitting of oneself, but only if it's voluntary. There are also, again with this, some kink undertones being worked into it from the BDSM type of community. It's very interesting though, because while that's going on, there's also the fact that there is also a narrative on top of that. And so because of that, you're having characters who are being forced into this not willingly. So there is a whole bunch of things to examine. Again, that's another video. We've done part of it in the whole Girdle of Submission video though. It ends up creating a very unique energy and dynamic though that has not been able to be fully matched outside of this era. Sometimes things come close, but most of the time things just veer widely off. It's because without that undercurrent of that push and pull from the original author and also his wife, and then also the person he had ghostwriting towards the end, you just get a very different energy. Because if that element is not fully understood, the complexity of it doesn't get entirely worked into the narrative in the same way. Now back to the story. Octavia hates Queen Clea because of what she did to her people, the Oranians. And so after she goes through the training wearing the chains, her first test in self-control is to fight Queen Clea. But Clea is one of those prisoners who cannot be broken. She cannot accept the gentle, loving authority. Clea instead shoots Octavia in the back and knocks out Wonder Woman. Laughing with malicious triumph, the powerful Clea carries her unconscious prisoners to Wonder Woman's plane. What fools those Amazons were to think they had me tamed. They taught her how to fly their planes. That's how confident they are in their brainwashing program. Or alternatively, you could look at it as that's how much they believe in the power of rehabilitation and transformation and the idea that anybody can turn their life around. It really depends on how you frame it. So depending upon your headspace and how you're looking at it, you could get very different things out of these stories, and that's really fascinating. Now this story has a twist though. Upon waking up as a prisoner and going to try and thwart Queen Clea, they find her that she's a prisoner too, because Atlantis has been overrun by the male slaves. They utilized the weapons that were left behind from man's world when they took and captured that boat, again continuity, and used it to subjugate all the women. They flipped the script and now they have the Atlantean women literally living on their knees to make them shorter than them. It's gotten real dark down in Atlantis. Now Clea is able to wrest back control, but she's still defeated because the manlings of Atlantis are cowards and they flee before Steve and Etta Candy and the Holiday Girls and their superior firepower. And so Clea is captured again and taken back to Transformation Island, and that's where we see her next in Wonder Woman number 28 from the year 1948. In this comic, she becomes associated with the team that she's going to be associated with going forward, and that's Villainy Inc. And this is a cabal of Wonder Woman's enemies. When Eviless, who manages to get herself taken to Transformation Island through manipulation, is able to escape the influence / fight the influence of the Venus Girdle, she assembles other villains Wonder Woman has fought who are kept prisoner on Transformation Island. You fools, you let these Amazons break your spirit. You've learned to be peaceful and obedient. Okay, you can keep your girdles on and obey us as our slaves. Because these prisoners are vulnerable. They have to listen to the people who tell them what to do. But some prisoners are not yet reformed. And here we get to see the roll call. Giganta, formerly a female gorilla. I like how they explain who they are. Queen Clea of Sunken Atlantis. Burna Brilliant, the Blue Snowman. Princess Maru, alias Dr. Poison, just fun to say. Hypnota, Magician of the Blue Ray. Zara, Priestess of the Crimson Flame. And Cheetah, really Priscilla Rich. She's like, I don't have as much of a title to say. And the Evil S decides that all sounds great. They're going to call themselves Villainy Inc. Wonder Woman 28 is one long story. Everything is directly connected. There isn't as much of a time gap as there was in, say, Wonder Woman number 8. But Clea features largely in the last part where she's trying to buy a submarine off Steve to get back to Atlantis. Or I guess the volcano near it. In this process, she ends up capturing Wonder Woman and taking her as her slave. Now, Villainy Inc. is a peak Wonder Woman story. It gets reprinted a lot, or it did. Maybe it will eventually in a future DC World's Finest. Not in the current one they have for the Golden Age time of recording, but number 8 is in there, issue number 8 if you're looking for it. That volume's called Enter the Cheetah. Wonder Woman does find herself ensnared by Clea in this issue, so you get to see some more direct interaction between the two, and they do still have that dynamic of her really wanting to subjugate Diana. And you also again just get to see that that's her default state, just trying to rule over others. Thou must remain bound captive. While performing thy task, I'll bind thy wrists in front of thee. You're so kind, Clea. Now this of course does not work out, and Clea gets captured alongside the rest, and we get this line from Hippolyta, which depending upon where you put the emphasis can be read very different ways. The only real happiness for anybody is to be found in obedience to loving authority. The only real happiness for anybody is to be found in obedience to loving authority. You see, depending upon how you emphasize the loving authority, it's either an authority that is loving or that you love authority. So you really have to think about it. Given the context, it's most likely to a loving authority as in an authority that loves you. But again, depending upon how you think about it, it could go different ways. They're gonna break them on that island. Clea's never gonna reform. Clea is one of those irredeemable Wonder Woman villains, at least in this era. Although you're not gonna see her again until the Bronze Age. All of this is to say that those authoritarian depictions of Amazons, they don't come out of nowhere. Now as mentioned, Clea vanishes for quite a bit as Robert Kanigher tries to remake the book into something that matches his view for it. We're also coming up on the era of the Comics Code, and Wonder Woman is going to be specifically cited for being a case where deviancy is being promoted, so the book is also going to be under extra scrutiny. Frederick Wertham, Seduction of the Innocent, Hearings, there are actual lines in that book about specifically Wonder Woman. I would read them, but this video is going to be long already. However, over time, Wonder Woman's classic villains would start to reappear, and Queen Clea is one of them. Queen Clea makes a re-entry in Justice League of America 135 in 1976, in Crisis in Eternity, which is one of the JSA/JLA team-up stories. We've been following the one specifically called Crisis, as they lead up to Crisis on Infinite Earths. This Crisis tends to be known more colloquially as Crisis on Earth S, because it brings in Earth S characters who are Fawcett characters. In fact, the main villain of this is King Kull from that universe, not Conan, King Kull, and he has a plan where he wants to destroy Earths 1, 2, and S. Now, Earth 2 was the Earth where the Golden Age heroes were situated, so those Avengers and those characters could be utilized in that setting on that Earth. It was said that most of the things happened the same on the two Earths, but there were some differences. Specifically, the Earth 2 was also a bit further along. Some of the characters were older. Now, what the story does is it firmly situates Queen Clea as from Earth 2, that those adventures happened there, because Wonder Woman has to take some time to explain to Superman, because she's teamed up with Earth 1 Superman, about how Atlantis works on her world. That looks like Atlantis over there. You know it, Superman? Yes, it's very much like the one on my world. Aquaman's people live there. But it's also very different. This Atlantis, it's populated by a race of tall, strong women and small, frail men. It's only recently risen back to the surface. Thousands of years ago, it sank below the ocean floor with its own atmosphere. But its people survived, retaining their original form without mutating into water breathers. I have a feeling we'll encounter Queen Clea, who's been plotting to regain the crown of Atlantis for many years. Guess she got off the island. The island didn't work out. None of us are surprised. Also, the word manling is still in play. There's no escape. Now, in this story, Clea's got her hands on some Venus girdles, and she has one on Blockbuster. But that's just a decoy so she can ultimately place it on Superman, because she wants him to fight for her, because people just have to obey this girdle. As mentioned, the girdle has an element where you can feel it influencing you, so Superman is trying to fight it, and Wonder Woman is able to stop him because she then reiterates that it's not just the person who put the girdle on, it's anybody who can tell the wearer what to do. So she's able to knock Clea out after just telling Superman to stop. Now this is the last outing for Clea pre-crisis, but we will see her post. And here she slotted in some interesting ways because her status has to change because she's been placed on Earth 2. Now Crisis at Infinite Earths, occurring through 1985-1986, crushed down the multiverse. There was just one Earth left at the end, so everything had to be placed into one timeline. And for some characters that was more complicated than others. Wonder Woman was one of them because she had been on the JSA and the JLA. Now there needed to be a way to reconcile that. Clea first debuts in this era in Wonder Woman Our Worlds at War in 2001, written by Phil Jimenez with pencils by Cliff Chang, Jamal Engel, and Buzz. Inks are by Wade Von Grawbadger, colors by Patricia Mulvihill. And this is a story eulogizing Hippolyta and telling her history, and also through her history, the history of Wonder Woman. It explains that she was inspired by her daughter who defied her to go to man's world and become Wonder Woman. And upon Diana's death and resurrection as the goddess of truth, Hippolyta would go back in time and become Wonder Woman in the World War II era. So the inspiration would become cyclical. There'd be a bit of a paradox element, but they don't want you to think about it too hard. The new history of the DC universe has restored her as the Golden Age Wonder Woman. This sets Hippolyta up as the Wonder Woman fighting Clea during the World War II era, and we see her as a member of Villainy Inc. And she is once more trying to conquer Atlantis and overthrow Queen Ares. Only now they're also bringing in some of the more Grecian elements that they've been playing with in that era, and so you hear a mention of Poseidon, which is going to be important for Queen Clea going forward. Clea enters Diana's Wonder Woman world in Wonder Woman 179 in 2002, during the Land of the Lost storyline, which is also written by Phil Jimenez, but the art is by Roy Allen Martinez. The colors are also by Patricia Mulvihill. Here she is positioned as the leader, at least at first, of a new Villainy Inc. A lot of the members are different characters or generational villains, but she remains the same. She's the same Clea. And here she wields the trident of Poseidon, and that's going to become an iconic image for her, which is part of why it's going to trickle over into the Absolute Universe. We see in issue 180, the Villainy Inc. has conquered Skartaris, which originally is a land at the Earth's core, and it was colonized by Atlanteans, so we're maintaining that connection of Clea's to conquering things associated with Atlantis. It's later said to be a separate dimension, however status has changed, time of recording. As for Clea, in 180 she's more built up and they start to explain really who she was and they give her her backstory, and a lot of it is the same, but some of the energy, just partially because of how she's drawn, she just has a bit more of an air of menace. Diana builds her up by saying that she was one of her mother's most prolific and dangerous enemies, in a way heightening their connection and making it seem like they fought much more than Clea actually encountered Wonder Woman back in the day, but you could imagine that there were many more encounters with Villainy Inc. These beings arrived here with the weapon of a god in their possession. They took over our cities and abducted our people for their strange experiments. They were like no woman we had ever seen. Led by Clea, queen from fabled Atlantis, who used the trident of Poseidon to ravage us. Wonder Woman then says that it's Poseidon's trident, just giving them information. From her first moments in Skartaris, she knew what she wanted. Each member of her entourage was sent to a different sector of our world to conquer it in her name. Clea. It is her then. The deposed queen of Venturia. Venturia, a crumbling Atlantean outpost buried deep beneath the crust of the ocean floor, whose cruel empress, saw to it that gladiators died in horrible public arenas and men were spit upon as the lowliest slaves. Venturia, the sister city to the glorious Orania, over which Clea always craved dominion, and which did the same thing to male slaves, but we're not going to talk about it here. They do deal with some of the societal ramifications in Sensation Comics number 35 under Octavia, in all fairness, but Clea's only in that one in a flashback. The energy of Clea as this cruel conqueror is very much maintained. They also added an obsession with finding Atlantis, which was removed from the Earth for a time, hence the Skartaris conquering. It's part of a bigger plan. It's just the tone and the era of the story surrounding her that's different. You can see it in that this menacing villain origin story contains an upskirt panty shot. It's 2002. The cake is doing the most. It's more than cheesy. It's falling out. It's spilling out. On this channel, we're not anti-cake, but there are different eras where sometimes it feels like it's trying a little bit too hard, and for some, images like that might fall into that. They may undercut some of the energy the scene is trying to convey, because there's this not very subtle attempt at titillation going along at the same time that could be bordering for someone exploitative, while for others they won't mind. Mileage varies. For me, I like when the cake feels integrated into the scene and not obviously there to try and appeal to people's baser instincts. It's always trying to do that, but at least have some couth to mask. Now, 182 gets even more into Clea, as the cover even proclaims, in the claws of Clea, and you get to see from a bit of a different perspective how scary she is based on how she treats those she's imprisoned. They've kept lots of the ideas the same. She still has this penchant for stepping on others, but just there's more of a focus on the cruelty involved in that, whereas that really wasn't the central thing being focused on in the Golden Age. Or at least if it was, the energy surrounding again was different. But But a lot of the things here is how she subjugates the Atlanteans and how she's now subjugating the people of Skartaris. This arc plays with that a bit more, and it centralizes it on Clea. You saw that even in that write-up where it made it seem like this is more Clea behavior and less overall Atlantean behavior, which was more what was going on in the Golden Age. She's maintaining that same kind of irredeemable energy, but now it's more individualized. My name is Clea, little man. Say it. He can't say anything, Clea. I've taken away his tongue. Give it back to him, Jinx. I want him to say my name. I want Travis Morgan and his inseparable daughter to say the name of the monarch of Venturia who has conquered Skartaris. The Land of the Lost in general is a solid Villainy Inc. arc that has some fun twists, and you do get to see Clea go up against Wonder Woman, but this time because she's going up against Diana and they've introduced that kind of legacy element, there's a different vibe. Because now you're leaning into that legacy aspect of this is Diana taking on one of her mother's foes. So it is you, the daughter of Hippolyta. How pathetic your legacy is. What a tragic sham she raised. And what of your daughter, Clea? Didn't she betray you to your greatest enemies and ensure your defeat at the hands of my mother? Petra betrayed me because she had a weak heart and fragile soul. What's your excuse, Amazon? Yeah, Petra mentioned again. Clea and the rest of Villainy Inc. are ultimately betrayed by Trinity with a virus sent to devolve Skartaris. I'm cliff noting, but Clea ends up devolved. And yet we get to see her again in issue 184. This is in the following story called U-Boats and Dinosaurs, which is a fun time. It's another story written by Jimenez. He's also doing the art in this, but the ink's by Andy Lanning, and the colors again, Patricia Mulvihill, but this time alongside Wildstorm Effects. After the war in Skartaris, Wonder Woman and Trevor stick around for a bit. They help rebuild. You get a really nice recap page of everything that went on, but at the end they're meant to be sent back from whence they came, and they end up going too far back as they're sent back in time. They're also being sent back by the Sorceress Supreme. Doctor Strange is gonna sue. But because they go back in time, we get to see Clea in the World War II era. And we get to see her trying to make a deal with some Nazis in a nod to the Golden Age story where they took those prisoners as soldiers. You also get to see Petra, and here you see that she really isn't enamored with what her mother is doing. And her mother still has that same kind of disdain for her daughter. What this also means is that we get to see Clea fight Wonder Woman's mom, Hippolyta, as Wonder Woman. And Diana wants to help, but she can't go in as herself, and so she has to disguise herself, and she does so as Miss America. And yes, this is Miss America, Joan Dale, who we did a video about. There was a time where she was positioned as being on the JSA, and this was kind of utilized in a rather than Wonder Woman kind of capacity, because they would do that with certain characters, try and have them fill in the gaps of the World War II era where certain characters like Superman and Batman should have been, couldn't be because one timeline. But ultimately that problem is solved by having Hippolyta time travel, so then you kind of have Miss America still there and kind of associated with the JSA. Also, I love that she transforms with her Wonder Woman spin into her, and it looks good. They picked a nice version of the costume. And so she does get to work alongside her mom, spend some time with her, so that her mom is dating Wildcat. Thank Olympus. Wildcat, it's Hippolyta. How are you? Wildcat? Hey, Dollface, how you been? When do I get another chance to put the squeeze in that beautiful bodice of yours? I miss you, Polly. I might have to head to Grand Central and hop on a train and pay you a visit. Another time, Ted. Right now I need your help. And the Justice Society. I need any information you have on a Nazi saboteur named Armageddon. This from 185. I support this. I kind of really support Wildcat and Hippolyta. It was one of those things that when I first read it, I was like, I've never thought about this before, but I don't hate it. As for Clea, at the start of the story, she's betrayed by Petra, for she is still not a good mother. That remains consistent. And after that, she pops up here and there. I guess she got re-evolved at some point. And you see her associated with Villainy Inc. or working with Cersei, those kind of things. But that moment was her last really big arc time recording, which brings us to the absolute version of Queen Clea. The Absolute Universe really sought to play with her and incorporate a lot of these past elements, but with a twist on them. They're remixed. In the Absolute Universe, Diana was raised in hell by Cersei away from the Amazons, and she's also being raised by some of the other gods. They're kind of forging her into being a weapon, or at least a warrior. She's gonna need to fight. But her environment is also one of fierce love, but also this training. So again, there's that contradiction being nicely worked in. It doesn't have the underlying kink factor, but that kind of balancing act that is core to Diana's character of having these disparate elements that are all working together, that is there. Now, the Absolute Universe characters are meant to still maintain their core traits. And in the case of Diana, that is bringing some of the compassion and kindness to her character, to the point where she is not being altered by her environment, rather she is altering it. But because of that, the cruelty of the world is something she is still struggling to understand. She's coming to accept that it may be necessary and at times prudent, but it's not something that comes naturally. Now, she is given information about a maze that may have an Amazon inside of it, because she she is looking for the Amazons. She knows that they've been displaced, and she knows that she was one of them. She's given this information by Dr. Poison, who is also a member of Villainy Inc. In this world, she's under the control of Veronica Cale, and she's kind of a gas cloud. Veronica Cale is working behind the scenes to destroy Diana because she does not appreciate that this Wonder Woman is garnering support, that people are listening to her. She's inspiring people to, in Veronica's eyes, go against the status quo and rebel. Now, keen to meet one of her people, Diana enters the maze, and it's here she meets Queen Clea, who is described as the true monster of the maze. I'm saying true monster because many would expect the Minotaur, who is there. He's named Ferdinand, but he ends up being allied with Diana. But this is another way where, like the original Golden Age story, you hear of Clea before you see her, although it's not as big and long of an introduction as the original Golden Age story has. Now, Clea is hunting Petra, whom the Minotaur Ferdinand seeks to protect, and that name is so similar to her daughter's name that it can't be a coincidence. Hopefully it comes back into play in some way later. It's just spelled a little differently. I know this is hardly the time for it, but since you have always been here, I could not think of anyone better to ask. Have you ever seen an Amazon inside the maze?
Sorry, some say Clea is an Amazon, though I've seen no evidence of it other than her strength.
Clea.
The monster who has taken control of the maze. The woman who hunts Petra.
Not Clea. It's Queen Clea. But then you have always had a disrespectful tongue, Ferdinand. After I've grown weary of your screams, we'll cut it out so I never have to think of you again. Hey, remember she had that other person's tongue cut out? Still cutting out tongues. This time wearing incredible platforms. Her poor ankles. I wonder if the shoes and her walking on her fishmen like that is a nod to how tall the Atlanteans were in the original stories. Diana actually calls the fishmen menfish at first, which is just awkward enough of a turn of phrase to be reminiscent of manling as a word. Now, Diana cannot stand for any injustice, and so she ends up seeking to free the people in the maze, and this ends up destabilizing everything for Clea. The maze is really fun. It's this nightmarish blend of things, especially when Diana is under the influence of hallucinogens. And at that point, it really starts to look as if it's underwater, which is fun because you're dealing with someone from Atlantis. And even the whole situation of it itself is a kind of callback to the Golden Age story and version of Atlantis, because we're in this kind of undercity, even though it is a maze. So you're working through, again, multiple elements in a fun remixed kind of way. It's honestly amazing. I was able to conquer anything with these minions, dumb as a box hair, every last one. The casualness of the cruelty, it feels very in line with the Golden Age and less purely centralized on Clea. And even deeper in the maze, Diana does find an Amazon, Io, and also starts to find hints that maybe she can come to possess the Trident of Poseidon, of which Clea wields a fragment, although it's inside of a trident that looks very much like the one she wielded post-Crisis. That had become a core piece of her iconography by the time of the Absolute Universe. It's interesting because you never see her steal it. It's just something that she already has. Same with here, it's just established that she has it. In this story, she does again kind of just emerge as a despot triumphant before Diana gets there and then upends everything. However, here Diana has many more people to free, not just Steve. Nobody's being left a slave in this story. Both Io and Ferdinand refer to Clea as mad. I'm counting on it. Clea, you are a match for many things in this maze, but I am not one of them. You, where is my siren? The panels of Wonder Woman getting the trident are just cool, as is the casual arrogance which comes with her having greater understanding of what's going on than Clea. That comes across a decent amount in this series. Just sometimes it's just an aura that she has. Like her Golden Age counterpart, this Wonder Woman often just knows what to do, is able to pivot to different solutions, and is willing to do what needs to be done, and oftentimes is not expressing a lot of concern while doing so. Not concern from other people, but just concern that things are going to go poorly. At times, this version can almost become a paragon of perfection, to a level that some may find unappealing, while others may embrace that factor and enjoy how confident and in control she is, how she comes across as cool, or just how she comes across as fully realized in a bit of a unique way, because unlike the mainline version, she doesn't have quite as many influences pulling her in quite so many directions, even though there are still many there. There's a bit more freedom to pick and choose with her. In Absolute Wonder Woman, a lot of Diana's emotional pathos comes from those around her, less so than from her herself, although that may change. Again, time of recording. We're 12 issues in. We'll see where we end up. By the time this is out, it'll probably be 13 issues in. That's why you always gotta say time of recording. The moments in this issue with her and Clea are some of the moments where she has to think about her actions a bit more in terms of the consequences that they may have, and not being entirely sure that she's made the right choice. Clea had a small piece of it embedded in her staff, the Trident Poseidon. Through no fault of the Trident, it may have helped push her over the edge. Close proximity to a tool of the gods could easily drive one mad. The Trident tells me Clea is Atlantean. I'd believed all Atlanteans long dead. Does this mean Atlantis itself also still exists? Are there more? Or is she the last of her people? Her home in the sea, and she's been separated from it for decades, perhaps longer. Ooh, see, we're going with classic Atlantis here, that it was actually under the sea and not a pocket. Now, this story could have given Clea a total out, get your violin out kind of backstory, but it doesn't, which I personally appreciate. It acknowledges that there could be reasons for her actions, there may have been exasperating circumstances, but at the end of the day, she was still a monster inside this maze. She's cannibalizing her own fishmen, they go into that later. This story acknowledges that Clea is still a monster, which also fits with the whole labyrinth theming, but because Diana understands the circumstances, it makes her more inclined to want to give Clea a second chance, which is something that she's already naturally inclined to anyway. You took my siren, you destroyed my staff. Now you claim my trident of Poseidon? None of those things belong to you, Clea. And that, not me, is why you could not possess them. Thank you, goddess, for keeping me humble. Give me control of the trident. That demand nicely sums up why you fail. See there, in that thank you for keeping me humble, there's some vestiges of that acceptance of submission and loving authority. That true strength can also come through surrender, in this case to the task that she needs to complete. Now, the big difference between this Queen Clea and the mainline Queen Clea is that this Queen Clea is introduced as a prisoner. Here, Clea is displaced and has seized what power she could, rather than just being dissatisfied with what she had. But she still did so cruelly, so the core of her character remains intact. Just the circumstances around it have changed, giving Diana a bit more sympathy for her, which may or may not be a mistake. You're trapped inside a prison, cut off from your natural habitats, your homeland, eating your own menfish. They heal and regenerate limbs. How else would we survive? They know it is an honor. All the names we will give to things in order to make them reasonable. You see me as an enemy, but I'm in fact your salvation. For I bring you what you ache for more than anything else. Diana has made an opening in the maze, and she actually allows Clea and the fishmen to leave. And as she does so, she says that she can return to Atlantis, or whatever Atlantean home she has. You were a monster in this maze, but are you a monster outside it? I'm willing to take the chance and find out. But you will find me less accommodating if I see you are still a monster when given your freedom, Clea. The choice is yours. I hope freeing her is not a mistake I will come to regret. What she became inside the maze may be unforgivable, especially when others like Ferdinand and Io held on to their beliefs in spite of the horrors they faced. Time will tell if she can become something else with her freedom, and it'll be my burden to carry if she cannot. This is a really interesting moment for several reasons. For one, it allows for the return of Queen Clea as a friend or a foe. There's nothing to stop her from coming back and seeking vengeance, or to still try and capture Urania. She could still be a problem, or she could be changed by Wonder Woman's kindness. A voluntary update on the sentiment of Transformation Island. The idea that anyone can change. This time, it's an option. That's something that she's being given, a choice, not the submission girl. This also allows the option for Diana to be wrong, which is not something she's had to encounter too much in this series to this point. You do see her willing to take on this potential burden of what if she is wrong. It's just a very interesting moment and one very in keeping with Wonder Woman, especially classic Wonder Woman. Be good, Clea. Hera guides you to a better path. Don't murder anybody's family with snakes. This is a fun version of Clea that maintains much of the original while giving it a spin. It tweaks it for the absolute universe. It was cool to see her pop up and get a new design, but also see so much of the original repurposed, but in a way that doesn't feel like a retread. It will be really cool to see if they play with that Petra connection at all, and whether they decide that she's going to be irredeemable or not. So far, the past versions of her have been quite irredeemable. I'm not sure which is more fun. The idea that she's just irredeemable throughout, or that she could change. If we're keeping in core with the idea that people are still very much aligned with how they were in the mainline universe, evil all the way, baby. So that is Queen Clea time of recording. Were you familiar with the character? Do you like her? Which version is your fave? Do you just want to see the story of how she got that trident? Are you reading Absolute Wonder Woman? I know, as always, too many questions. Please share all your thoughts down below. While you're down there, please do all YouTube things. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Hype if it's still there. Thanks so much for taking some time to spend discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. This was actually supposed to be a short video, and then I got too excited about all the history, and now it's super long. I hope you enjoyed the journey.